Hello, everyone. Welcome, educators and librarians around the country as we gather together in this virtual space called ALA Midwinter. My name is Lizette Serrano, your Scholastic book whisperer. Although we can't spend time with you in person, it gives us great joy to know that we can continue to connect and recharge about books with such passionate and caring librarians. Throughout the program, we'd love to hear from you and say hello in the chat room. Tell us where you're from. I'm still here working at home in New Jersey, enjoying two beverages, water and coffee. Tell us where you're from. What do you miss most about ALA Midwinter? Obviously, we miss you. We miss being nerdy at the booth and talking up all new books that we have for every reader. If this is your first time attending the conference, that is awesome. I hope you enjoy your time. I have the pleasure and honor of introducing our special guest today to share how words and pictures connect us emotionally and spiritually. They each will share that spark that ignited their book and so much more. So with that, grab a drink, a yummy snack, and let's start the show. It's always a special occasion to roll out the red carpet and introduce an incredible new talent to the picture book world. That moment is right now for artist Gracie Zhang. And get ready to fall in love with Lala's words. Lala is high-spirited, curious, sweet, and caring. With a pot of water, she travels to a concrete fence area in her neighborhood to water the plants every day. But it's her kind words that make them sway and nod. Readers will feel hope and love, buoyed by Lala's buttery yellow dress set against a bustling hot summer in the city. Lala's words about the transformative power of imagination, kindness, and being loved for who you are. And Gracie Zhang has captured this in a way that is radically triumphant, cathartic, and inspiring. Welcome, Gracie. Brenda Mayer celebrated her debut picture book, The Little Red Fort, is a delightful retelling of the old story of the Little Red Hen, and introduced us to Ruby, a fearless little leader who is full of ideas. It received numerous awards while being applauded for the girl power message and perfect read aloud. I adore Ruby's fierce determination and personality. She's such a strong lead character who does not give up and will do anything to achieve her goals. I want to be Ruby, and I'm so happy she exists for inspiring readers. And lucky for us, she's back. The Little Blue Bridge is a fresh spin on the three Billy Goat's gruff. Ruby refuses to be bullied and creates her own way to cross the creek. The story reads folklore, feminism, STEM, and a Latinx cast that celebrates creativity, building bridges of friendship, and community. Hi, Brenda. Our next creative team are bringing us an arresting, poetic journey on immigration, family, and home. Since her New York Times acclaimed debut, In a Village by the Sea, Moon T. Van's books have received many distinctions and awards. Moon is also a partner author with Room to Read, which works to break the cycle of childhood illiteracy and poverty in a single generation. Victor Guy is a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree and Society of Illustrators New York Gold medalist. Her art is filled to the brim with brilliant colors and technical ability. And Victor's debut children's book, Dazzleship, by Chris Barton, was embraced and decorated with star reviews and awards. Inspired by actual events in the author's life, Wishes tells a powerful, honest story about one family's search for a new home on the other side of the world. Masterfully paired with tender, poetic text and dreamy dual tones, Wishes makes an impactful impression on our picture book list, and I hope around the world. It's wonderful to have you here, Victor and Moon. All right, with that, I hope I did you all do justice. Now we're going to hear from Gracie Zhang.
Hi, I'm Gracie Zhang, and I am the writer and illustrator of Lala's Words. I'm currently in Brooklyn, New York, but Lala's Words was written in many different places. Originally, it was started in Canada, Vancouver, Canada, where I am born and raised. Lala's Words, the writing began on whatever paper I had at the time, and so there's some photos I have of the original writing where the story was extremely different, but on the back of receipt paper. There was a lot of sketches that happened on those papers too. The process of Lala was interesting because my background is not in writing, but in illustration. So there was a lot of back and forth between workshopping the images and the words. A lot of the time after I'd written something, it was only after I had placed it with the image that I felt like the writing wasn't working. I think it's nice when both the writing and the illustrations can both serve to better each other. It is a story about a mother and daughter and all the arguments and fights and love between them. At that time, it was an interesting period because I had relocated back to live with my family after years of being apart from them. And there was a lot of tense conversations had with my mother, and a lot of it wasn't about anything very serious, but it was just a very hard to describe mother-daughter relationship. And so that was the seed that was planted for Lala's words. I had previously moved back from New York, and so at the time I was missing the environments, the life I had there, the weather, specifically the summer. So I set Lala's words in a New York summer where it's extremely hot and humid and steam seems to rise up from the ground. And there is not too much greenery in the neighborhood I was in. There are a lot of parks, but nature didn't seem to fill the space in the same way that I was used to. So that is how Lala started. It's funny because I had originally written Lala with myself in mind, but I think it was when I finished the book how much she was so similar to my mother herself. It's interesting because a lot of times parents, they're not purposely trying to, I guess, create negative feelings for their children, but you're working with what you have at the moment. And I think my intention with the story was a reminder, not just for children, but for adults to, enjoy the small things and how important it is, not just the words that we're saying, but how we say them. When Lala was pitched, there was a lot of different variations that it went through. The color scheme wasn't set yet, and I think I went through 5 or 7 different drafts of what the book would look like. Originally, I intended it to be very sparse in color, black and white, and maybe Lala in a green dress. But I think it was very powerful to see how green the plants became when they show up later in the end of the book. And so I think the yellow of Lala's dress became a nice metaphor for her brightness. There was a lot of back and forth as well on how color would play in Lala's words. I love working in ink, and I work traditionally, and I had done a lot of the final spreads in black and white. It was only playing around, seeing how colors would look in the final book, that I think we decided having the bright greens pop out as a surprise near the end worked best. And the bright spot of yellow in Lala's dress represents her brightness and curiosity. Lala's words I had written with my mother in mind as something she could have read to myself or my siblings, where she would take away something, a lesson for her, not just for the kids. It was also written with librarians in mind too, partly because of the very fond memories I have as a child being taken to the library. And specifically, there was 2 librarians who were fantastic performers, which included puppets and oral speaking. It was it's such a funny memory, actually, because I've never seen so many kids laugh like 60-year-old men. But it's a story that I hope would be entertaining to be read out loud as well. Ultimately, what I hope kids take away from Lala's words is not just the content of what we're saying, but also how we say things. And to always have a reminder of seeing the beauty in everyday life and that it can be seen everywhere.
Thank you, Gracie. The Little Blue Bridge is my 3rd book, and there's a bit of irony in the fact that I'm an author at all. My parents didn't read to me, and in our childhood home, books were definitely not in the budget. Fortunately, down the street and around the corner from my house was a library. So I spent my summers walking to the library to explore and devour the selections that it offered. Picture books, chapter books, magazines, whatever I could find. And of course, the librarians read to us during the summer. But that's not all the library provided. I also got to touch a turtle shell, watch a magician make things disappear, got to learn how to sign the alphabet. And more powerful than the memory of those experiences was the feeling of unconditional acceptance. Unlike school, there's no judgment in a library. Everyone who walks in that door automatically belongs. Everyone shares a sort of higher purpose, like the pursuit of more. And that is what a library showed me. There is more out there than you know. And you have to illuminate those bridges before children can ever hope to cross them. For some kids, more might have become being a herpetologist or maybe a librarian. For me, more was becoming a teacher, working to help children recognize and understand the possibilities before them so that they could strive to reach their full potential. The last few years, I've also taught writing classes at our local libraries, and in a full circle kind of moment, I've even gotten to do that at the same library that I used to frequent. More recently, my work as an author has expanded that reach and allowed me to share the story of a brave, clever, problem-solving girl. And thanks to you, people all over the country are reading The Little Red Fort. My upcoming book, The Little Blue Bridge, is a modern retelling of the Three Billy Goats Scruff. The original Norwegian tale was first recorded nearly 2 centuries ago, and it's been available in English for well over 150 years. It speaks to universal concerns of power and self-preservation. And as a human and a middle child, those themes really struck a chord with me. So I've always been drawn to that story. However, like with The Little Red Hen, I took issue with the ending of The Three Billy Goats Scruff. Murder just seemed like maybe those goats took it a little too far. I mean, they got their problem solved, but my keen parenting instincts wondered about the example that set. So I wrote a retelling, and then another one, and then another one. I tried it with the goat and troll characters. I tried it with humans, but none of them were quite right. So I didn't show them to anybody. Then, shortly after the release of Little Red Fort, my editor asked me for another retelling. So I wrote a 4th version and I sent it to her. Let's just say she wasn't in love with it. But she was, however, enamored with Ruby's spirit of independence and perseverance. So she wisely suggested, why don't you try writing it one more time, but this time use the characters from The Little Red Fort. Brilliant woman. So I was excited about seeing what would happen by, putting Ruby in this new situation. I wanted to see how she would handle it. The confluence of these characters and this particular tale turned out to be the magic combination. Ruby is a competent child, intentionally so. In her, we see a sister who is underestimated, told she's too little to cross the creek, and yet she knows without a doubt she belongs on that bridge as much as anyone. She's armed with confidence, engineering competence, and perseverance enough to know that somehow she's going to get across that water. Never mind, there's a looming bully on the bridge demanding snacks as a toll for passage. Because we live in a world with lots of people with differing desires and differing perspectives, of course, there are going to be many opportunities in our lives to have conflicts. But when Ruby encounters a potentially adversarial situation, she doesn't take the bait. Instead, she de-escalates the situation with a disarming display of self-reliance, creativity, and resilience. And in the end, she's not only made a bridge, but she's made an unlikely friend. And she did all of this without even harming any trolls. So that's a bonus, right? The takeaway I hope children get is this. You might not always get to control whether or not a problem occurs, but you do get to choose how you deal with it. Ruby is the very embodiment of this idea. Whether she's no one believing in her, whether there's a bully in front of her, she's going to find a way to make it through. She's going to find a way to make things happen for herself. And we're still talking about themes of power and self-preservation, but we're doing it in a way that is relevant for children today, because today, more than ever, we children and adults need to be able to get along with all kinds of people and people that we might even perceive as antagonists in our own lives. Due to their universal themes, both of the books, Little Red Fort and Little Red Hen, could have been written about any family anywhere. I certainly didn't know what the characters were going to look like. But when I first saw Sonia's beautiful renderings of my imagined characters, I was delighted to see representation that would resonate, uplift, and provide visibility for the students that I work with. In my district, we have 13 now, 13 elementary sites. And when Little Red Fort first came out, I made it a point to say yes to every book fair signing request in my district. I thought it was important for the students to see that one of their teachers had made her dream come true. I thought, well, if they could see a regular person could do something like that, that they would know they could do it too. And I still agree that that's an important thing. But it turned out to be a much more momentous moment and significant moment when they saw Sonia's illustrations for the first time. 3 different little girls came up to me, held up the book, and squealed with delight, "Ruby looks like me." The illustrations told them, you matter. You belong here, in this library, in this school, in this world. It's my hope that by extension, librarians and educators listening today will share these books with kids, and in doing so, continue the life-changing tradition of helping build bridges of possibility and potential for more young readers.
Thank you, Brenda. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here today to speak to you and to share the stage with Brenda, Gracie, and Victor. I am grateful for the support Scholastic has given this book. And I'm also grateful to Victor for taking a spare manuscript and some research notes and turning that into something so fully realized and beautiful. I wrote this story after the Muslim travel ban went into effect in 2017, a ban that has now put the lives of many thousands of refugees in limbo. Many Americans, perhaps including you, were saddened and outraged by this ban, but there were many others who were indifferent to it or who supported it and who were very suspicious of all migrants in general. Because of this, I wanted to write a story where the reader could see and feel the story from the inside, from inside a family of refugees and from inside the heart of a refugee. Because Wishes is inspired by my family's own story. And every line of text is grounded in our experience. But our story isn't unique. It is told again and again, every day around the world. I was born in 1980, while my family was in hiding. My father was wanted by the newly installed Vietnamese government for having served on the losing side of a long and brutal civil war. We were hiding because we were worried that my father would be captured, imprisoned, and possibly killed. Shortly after I arrived, my family quietly made our way back to our village on the central Vietnamese coast. We stayed in a house close to the beach, and my mother and her family began secretly preparing for an escape to Hong Kong. Almost no one knew we were leaving until the moment we left. We used my grandfather's fishing boat for the journey, but we couldn't tell anyone else about our plans because the boat would have sunk under the weight of everyone who was desperate to leave. Even my own father didn't know we were leaving until the moment we left. He didn't get to say goodbye to his family. It was only by luck that he spotted his younger brother sleeping on the beach that sweltering night we left. My father snuck up to his brother and pinched him. And with that one pinch, my uncle woke up from a dream, got up, and silently left with us. Because of that one pinch, my uncle didn't see his wife and children for more than 10 years. Like many refugees, we braved violent storms. We braved the scorching sun. But worst of all, we braved terrible heartaches. Every one of the 22 passengers aboard our boat left behind many beloved family members and friends. Some we never saw again, including my grandfather. Yet we were lucky because no one died on our weeks-long voyage. We almost perished in a terrible storm, but we didn't. We survived. I grew up in Galveston, Texas, right next door to my relatives. They took the same route around the same time, but they took much longer to complete their voyage. They encountered tragedy after tragedy, and eventually they lost someone. They lost their young son, who was about 8 years old. I have 2 children, nearly the same age, and I wonder, how do you survive that? But this story, this book, isn't only about loss. And it's not about just hope and resilience either. It's about change. It's about how each of us, each and every one of us, has the power to change things. Just a few months ago, many of us had the chance to dramatically change things. And we did. We voted for a new US president. And our votes have made and will make a world of difference. But the change doesn't need to stop there. Stories have the amazing power to change us. And we have the amazing power to change stories. And no one knows this more than a librarian. Thank you to each and every one of you. Since I was a young girl, 6 years old, libraries have always been a source of comfort and inspiration to me. So thank you for continuing to make our world a little bit kinder, a little bit fairer, a little bit safer, and a little bit more beautiful with your libraries and your books. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moon. That was really touching. Thank you for sharing your story and giving me a chance to work on such an amazing manuscript. As Moon mentioned, we started on this book in early 2018. So it's been more than 3 years. There were many discussions back and forth and changes throughout the process. It was one of the most challenging projects for me. But I think the collective effort paid off in the end. And I'm really proud of it. So a big thank you again to Moon and my Scholastic team for that. I knew this book would be something very special as soon as I finished the manuscript, which didn't take that long as there were only 75 words. But a substantial amount of story and emotion were packed in between the lines. I especially loved the narration by inanimate objects. The passivity really amplifies the little choices individuals have in times of great changes and turmoils. And the third-person perspective speaks to the universality of wishing for hope in a sea of helplessness, relatable to anyone who has to leave their homes in search for a better life. In the original version, there's a time lapse from the 70s to present days. When we see the little Vietnamese girl morphing into other refugee children, then we see her again as a grown-up woman rescuing a Syrian refugee girl. I love the idea that our protagonist's life has come full circle, and that the story in the book is by no means a singular event in the past, like Moon mentioned. But the story was later changed to a more straightforward narration to avoid confusion. However, we decided to keep the sketch of the little girl morphing into other refugees and use it on the outer case, as we deeply believe in the universality and timelessness of the story. Here's the final art. There are no cute animals, dazzling embezzlements, or poppy colors in this story that artists like myself can often fall back on to interest readers. So I asked myself, how do I make people care about the ordinary and humble objects in this story? I took notes from director Antonio and Tarkovsky, who are able to convey so much emotion through composition and letting seemingly passive objects play an active role in advancing the stories. For example, in this page, I wanted the jagged tree to represent the abrupt severance from home. If you squint, you can see the black silhouette kind of look like a carbonous tear. Home is a central theme in Wishes, being uprooted from it and the wish to build another one somewhere else, somewhere safe. In order for readers to feel the sense of displacement, loss, and hope in the story, the pages need to carry the warmth, tactility, and beautiful imperfection of home. Last winter, I went back to China to visit my grandma, who has been living in the same house for decades, the same house I have spent countless summers in as a kid. I took photos of the peeled paint, the cracked walls, and the rusted door frame, which eventually found their ways into this book. I also saw the way sunlight dances on surfaces. The hazy dreamlike quality it creates is not unlike memory. Deciding the play of light is key. It has helped me set the mood and tone of the book. I've always believed that with the right pairing between words and pictures, 1 + 1 should be greater than 2. And this chemistry can sometimes be created with juxtaposition. Moon's poetic words flow like a steady stream of water, and I want my art to contrast it with an emotional arc. This arc is mainly achieved with colors. The story starts with cool neutrals, slowly progresses into violent reds when the voyage reaches its most trying point. When the little girl remembers home, the cool color is brought back, mixing with the undercurrent of red. And when hope appears on the horizon, the red slowly cools down to pink and purples. I'm also using seagull as a hidden motif for the wish of a better life. It appears on the cover formed by stars, in the incense smoke, in the little boy's dream, as a monument in the new city, and on the author's note page. It will be really interesting to see if any reader pick up on this Easter egg. And that's all from me. Hope you guys like the book. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful. Thank you again, Gracie, Brenda, Victor, and Moon. It's beautiful. We did say it underrated to say how picture books connect us in so many ways. That I feel like they often serve as a compass, opening of doors into history, time, and space, and how to build empathy with each other and understand our world better. And I'm so glad that you are putting these books into the world, and we're helping to do that. So we're going to go on to our Q&A segment. It's a new year, as you're well aware. I know a few of us, my colleagues, friends, we're talking about our reading goals for 2021. And I wanted to ask you guys, as creators of picture books and stories and being an author, what are your book goals for the year? Either for, again, as an author for this book, tell us about your book goals. Who wants to start?
It's my hope that kids will read the story and realize that they should focus on how to make their goals happen rather than getting distracted by all the obstacles in the way of those goals.
I hope this book opens hearts and minds, and I hope readers will feel empowered to take big and small steps to change stories, any story that has been repeated for far too long and far too often.
If I can add something, I know Moon and I talked about this last time, that there weren't many books when we're growing up that makes us feel like we can really see ourselves as the protagonist. So it's important that Moon's story is being told. And I think it's important that readers can see themselves in that story and realize that their story also matters. I think Moon touches on letting people who don't have that experience kind of live inside the story to see it, but I think it's also important for people who have experienced it to have that experience validated and know that it was a worthy story to be told.
Absolutely. And it's actually been very touching for me to hear when not only this book, but one or two of my other books, when someone from the Vietnamese community or someone from a refugee community or an outsider community, when they say that the book has resonated with them in such a way, it definitely means a lot.
New Year's wishes for the books we've been talking about. I think what Moon and Victor said about seeing ourselves reflected from a very early age, I think is extremely validating. And I think that's something that's happening. I see changes, and I see certain books being shared by friends who may have never shared a children's book before. So I think there's slowly a change happening. And I think also how picture books are seen. I've always seen picture books as something, they're beautiful stories that can be read and kept throughout time. Like they're beautiful in what they are. And I've kind of realized now there's a lot of people who think it's only something targeted toward a certain age gap. So it'd be nice to see, I guess, for adults who are reading those stories to their kids to continue taking away those lessons and learning from them.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree with that. I also love that Lala, the dedication. I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think you said to all the Lalas out in the world. I love that message because, again, that's a reflection of, giving. I always love reading dedication pages too, but I love that moment of seeing themselves and seeing the character do their story. And I think that was really special that you put that note there in dedication page. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, here's the last question. It's kind of a speed round. So if you can describe your book in 3 words, what would they be? Should we start with you again, Brenda?
I would say creativity, resilience, and friendship.
I'll go. 3 words: kind, creative, and hot. Set in a very hot summer, and the New York heat, I think, has a way of just penetrating every wall.
I would describe Wishes as an honest story, a hopeful one, and also an incomplete one, because the story didn't start there and it doesn't end there. And, what does the next part of that story look like?
I think 3 words I would describe would be courage, hope, and empathy.
That's beautiful. Thank you all. Well, that concludes our event. I hate to see you guys go. This was very special, and I think all of your books will help facilitate meaningful conversations in libraries and classrooms about kindness, compassion, and what inspires us. So thank you all for giving us some joy in the new year. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, librarians. Thank you for all that you do every single day. We hope to see you soon. Take care.